24, 2021 Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'm Chuck Fuller. To my right is Lenny Espy. Our third companion today, Tom Hart, will not be in the meeting today. He has a family medical issue that he's dealing with, so he sends his regards. And before we get going, I just want to finish reviewing a couple pieces of paperwork that we try and get done and get it out of the way before we start the meeting. So bear with me for another 2 minutes.
Gonna take off.
I would have wrote that.
Audrey, please don't submit that document yet. 5:35. And I'll just give Tom a call, let him know. He said if there's anything that needed his signature, he'd come down and do it. So, but I want to review this before we send it off.
I had a couple questions and the auditor, I have phone calls. If you have additional questions, we could put them together.
Okay, before we get going today, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, signature folder. There was selectmen's minutes of August 17th, 2021. Make a motion to approve the minutes of August 17th, 2021. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, for aye?
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the selectmen's non-public minutes of August 17th, 2021. Hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, for aye?
Aye.
The draft MS-35 is there. There's the pay abatement for tax year 2021 that was in there, and an application for solar exemption. Next item is the manifest dated August 26, 2021, in the amount of $30,456.93. I'll make a motion to approve the manifest from the 26th in that amount.
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye?
All right,
And reviewing the mail. We received confirmation of our first disbursement for the ARPA funds that we've applied for. So it'll be roughly in the 77,000, a little over that range when it comes in.
It came
It did come in. Okay, it's here. Second installment of that will be sometime in the summer of 2022. Now we basically start the process of documenting those eligible expenses that go against that COVID-related funding. We also received a letter from the folks at the Court-Appointed Special Advocates, CASA. They want us to put a warrant article on next year to donate $500 to their effort in training local folks to help in court matters. Do you see the issue with us putting that on as a warrant article?
no,
Okay, then I'll make a motion. We put it on as a warrant article to see what the public has to say.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye?
All right,
Okay. Change order from Jim's On-Call Painting. Jim is the gentleman that is on the high lift at the Library Town Hall project, doing the painting. As a result of his work, we've discovered we had to make some trim work repairs in the cupola. And we also had one of the, for lack of a better term, one of the acorn pieces that hangs underneath the eave had been completely rotted out. So volunteers, Steve Regal and Leo Racine, basically put together the trim pieces needed in the cupola, and Leo built a new acorn in the same style as what's there. And Jim will be putting those back up. For that and that additional work, it's basically a $4,500 change order. Make a motion, we approve the $4,500 change order for Jim's On-Call Painting.
and second it.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye?
All right,
And those funds will be coming out of the fundraising funds for the historic town hall project. Old business, Audrey. Well, let's do,
Sorry about that.
before we dive into that. Do you have any comments?
I do,
Okay.
but I'm not that old. I'm not old.
No, I was looking at the order here. I'm sorry, I was reading, it's like,
Just rolled right in.
yeah, I want to do that. I want to do the town administrator, selectmen's comments, not the old business. Sorry,
That's okay.
I was referring to you as item number 7. It's not true.
Okay, so I identified some air purifiers. I based my research on not only the health quality and what they take out of the air, these are medical rated, and the filters will last up to a year, probably more in this room because it won't be on as often. And requesting 1,840, that's a unit in this room, and one in each of our offices, one in each of the rooms back there. And then that also includes an additional filter, which would bring us basically 2 years.
Okay. And the filters, I think the big one for this room was like 65. And the other one's a smaller unit, so it's a lesser charge.
Correct.
So that would become 3 years from now, an annual charge to be part of regular
Right.
building maintenance and operating expenses.
What
Okay.
I didn't know is if we would want, I don't know what the fire station is like, and if there's an office there that people are in, if we need to add one for there.
We'll ask Randy before we do the order.
All right.
Yeah, we'll stop there this week and do that.
Okay, so if Randy did want one, that would be, let's see.
Lenny, can you stop by and ask him?
yeah,
Okay.
So if you were to make a motion not to exceed $2,080, then we can get his answer and move forward.
So the whole thing would be 2,000?
If it was a firehouse also.
For the size of it. Okay.
yeah, I mean, his office is just tiny,
Yeah, but
and I don't know how much time he spends in there.
I'm just thinking the regular meeting area when they open up the doors and everything, it'll kind of defeat the purpose of the clean air.
Yeah,
We'll ask him though.
Okay.
So You want to make a motion on it? Do you want to wait on it? What would you like to do? Lenny,
Me?
yeah,
Oh, we'll wait and see if Randy wants one.
okay, and then,
Yeah.
then pass it up. Okay,
Okay, so I mean, wait.
hold,
another week.
hold on to it for a week and then make that.
All right, as I said earlier, we received the ARPA funds and you noted that you have a report to October 31st. Darlene and I both have a tickler for that. I've been reviewing the 535. And as I've already mentioned, I have a couple of questions about it, mostly probably educational questions. The only thing left outstanding on the audit is the capital equipment, and I talked to our accountant, have that done shortly. As far as QuickBooks, we're in good shape for the head.
So the capital equipment was an item, a binder item that we had not had up to date. To meet some of our requirements. We've got the accounting firm helping us get that solved so that we meet the proper requirements of the CPA firm.
Yes. I'm gonna be out of the office tomorrow, but I'll be in on Friday. David's also out tomorrow. Darlene's out today and Thursday. So our focus, Darlene and I, can focus on Friday to put phones on Do Not Disturb because it's only closed day, and get some of the bank statements reconciled now that we have all of the deposits entered.
Perfect.
Yeah, so hopefully next week when we present the actuals for August, jumping ahead, the actuals for August will have up-to-date cash and a good trial balance at it.
Okay.
That's it.
I've got a couple things for you. The pictures of the rock in the South River. Randy took them. He sent them to me on the phone. I believe I forwarded them to you. Did you get them?
No, I understand.
Okay. We need some technology help to make sure that's there. Lost Valley Home Care check has never been received. So can we cancel that check and rewrite it? And as soon as we know that, let Chris Garcia know. And Kevin will come in and pick that up by hand. Rather than worry about the mail.
That's a $35 fee.
We need to cancel it because it's like he needs to get paid. So the response to the cemetery agreement that we asked for needs some clarification to the attorney. You want me to do that? Do you want to do that? He's not understanding what we want on that agreement.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay, I'll take care of that and copy you on that today. Okay, that was my 3 items for us.
I'm actually wondering on the cemetery agreement, because I think one of you, it might have been Tom, said last week that it might not be an issue now because of the fundraising that was done. It was a fundraiser for the cemetery and they raised enough money to.
It's going to be an ongoing issue. So the fundraiser took care of it, or a portion of it for this year. It's going to raise its head again next year, so we might as well deal with it from a legal standpoint.
Didn't Tom say something about what Lyle was trying to do was illegal, or there was a roadblock or something? Didn't Tom mention something about that last week?
I just remember you mentioned that there might be a different alternative or.
Yeah, he mentioned something about it.
And I know they needed to do some money for work, and I know they had a fundraiser on Facebook.
Yeah.
They raised the funds they needed for that effort. But even if that solves it for, the next month or this year,
It would be good.
we're right back to it next year.
Yeah.
The earnings are not making anywhere enough to cover the expenses. Thank you, Audrey. Lenny, do you have any?
The waste oil, we have to label each container,
We do.
and they never mentioned about the building, but I think it'd be a good idea to put a hazardous waste storage sign on the building once it gets, if it ever gets done. I don't know what, you have a place with what are those
Yes,
decals, stickers? I don't know how many we're gonna need for the containers,
5 in total.
5 total.
And probably a couple for the outside of the building. Put one by the door and put one facing the,
Yeah, I don't know, probably one each side, or,
well, one side,
well, one side you're not really gonna
yeah, you
see.
can't see it because it's up against the building,
Right, no,
but the other side facing the demo dumpsters,
Yeah.
yes, and the door, so, 7 of them.
and the ones for
Well,
the
the-
containers would be adhesive.
the ones for the containers say waste oil for recycling. And the other ones would be hazardous waste stored inside. And I sent a letter off to the guy about the land across from the fire station, but I haven't heard anything back yet. So
Okay,
I give him my phone, email, everything, so. That's all I got.
oh, you don't want to mention you've saved Clough Road culvert twice?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, so we've got, as we mentioned last week, we approved a unit to help deceive the beaver from building. Unfortunately, they have been extremely active. We've already taken 3 or 4 out of there, and every time we unplug it, within 24 to 48 hours, they're plugging it back up again. So Lenny's caught it a couple of times just before it went over the road, which is like 5 feet deep in front of the culvert. So hopefully we'll have a solution shortly on that one.
I have stakes, fence post.
Okay,
Once he pulls that trap out of the lower portion of the culvert, I'll put him in.
okay.
And he's still got a trap there.
All right. Yep, and it's working. Anything else?
No.
Okay, weather permitting, Pine River Road culvert installation should start when, Mike?
Oh, hopefully this week.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I was waiting until the weather broke before I bothered him on that. Mr. Evans get called away to Wolfboro. They have a very large dam there, and I guess there was some kind of a serious condition taking place in the dam. So with the emergency situation there, he had to go over there and do a repair. Priorities, put our project on hold. The way he put it to me, if the dam let go, then the town is gone. So I have no idea if he was joking or not, but it's a pretty large dam, and I don't know what the repair was, but apparently that needed to take precedent.
Yeah, and I know part of the problem getting in here has been the weather
Yeah.
with everything he's been doing. So, okay. Last week, Audrey, Grace, and I worked on the draft of the personnel policies. We've got another meeting this week. Hopefully, on Thursday this week, we'll have completed the draft. We received all the final documentation from HEB engineers for the contract for the from Mike Hansen at Hansen Bridge. At this point, we have received the final information, and as far as I'm concerned, it's done. We'll take a vote on that. The bridge is complete.
Except
Yeah,
Yep. I make a motion, we accept the final report.
okay, we'll second it.
All in favor, full eye.
All right,
Good. Done. The Bailey Road culvert repairs are continuing. We've got some rebar and concrete and some other stability work being done this week on that, and hopefully it'll be done shortly thereafter. I did talk to Mr. Hart this morning, and he's traded information with the gentleman that does the crack sealing. They're actually hoping, weather dependent, they get out later this week or next week to do those. One of the things that we discussed when we were in here on Thursday with Grace and Audrey was creating a letter, a friendly reminder letter about the no through trucks roads in any ordinance, and being able to attach that letter to each of the logging permits that comes in, just to make sure people are aware, hey, here are the roads that you shouldn't be going on. Any issues with that?
No, it might be a good idea.
Yeah, and I had Dave run a report. He's got an Excel tracker that he uses. There's 21 different logging companies that have been working in town this year. And I'm thinking we actually should look up those names or look at those mailing addresses from the reports and mail that same letter out to them. Agreement?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think most of the ones that be using that road are from Maine. So,
Yeah, I saw one coming up 153 this morning and he was not on Hundredth Bridge. He was on his, he was empty. It
Yeah.
was not Hundredth Bridge Road. Okay. Okay. That's what I had for old and new business. Health officer and road volunteer, Mr. Kahalan. You have a title now,
Oh, do I?
road volunteer.
All right, I didn't know I was supposed to come in to answer questions.
No, you know, if you want to just basically give a little bit more info on the Bailey Road thing, on what's
Sure.
happening there.
I met with Mike Hanson yesterday, and the forms and all the rebar bending and all the prep work has been done to come out and essentially stabilize the bank. And all the work in the water has been accomplished, so as far as the water work on your permit, that's done. I'll be down there with Mike, take some pictures and do the final filings when this is put into place. And with any luck, that's going to stabilize us until we can address it next year with the funding that we're hoping to get town meeting offered. So, on that note, I thought that CMA engineers were sending something in today. Perhaps that's the latest communication. I'm a little disappointed. I really hope that some of this information would have been here quite a while ago. But
Excuse me, they communicated with me yesterday. It will be here tomorrow.
tomorrow,
Yes.
okay. My running list of items that I'm really looking for that we as a town through that grant paid for would be the existing features plan. Now, that would be a stamped engineering plan. So that's relevant for going forward for permitting and design phases, when you try to put the final replacement together. So there's that, and should be a engineered stamp hydrologic and hydraulic report, and a stamped wetlands delineation report. And a side note for part of our grant application would be a phosphorus report from DK Water Resource Consulting. And that, I guess, is going to be a summarized item. It wouldn't be likely be a stamped plan, but there's 3 items of stamped plans that would be relevant for the town to have.
Would that phosphorus report also give us a little bit of an indicator on whether we should go after the 319 grant for the stormwater drainage around that whole phosphorus issue or not?
Well, Sally Sewell and I have been working towards that end of going for the grant, and it's our view that there's other relevant items to be included to go after the grant. So we didn't see that it would hurt to go after the grant. And it's one of those things in any given year, others may not apply. And you just jump ahead of the list, even though your priorities that they evaluate may be lower, less than optimal. Phosphorus loading, if we had a big dramatic decrease in the phosphorus from what our project was, that would position us well, but it doesn't negate that we have some merits. So we figured to go forward. The phosphorus was just something that we should include in the report, because any benefit from the phosphorus loading would be a positive. So we don't know what our benefits are without the report.
Without the report. Okay.
So yeah, we're plunging forward. The thing is, this window of time opened up in the middle of June and runs to September 17th to get the grant paperwork in. So that's why I'm a little concerned the timeline is getting a little snug.
And the review process we know whether we may qualify or not is put into next year?
Yeah, that should actually only take roughly a month or 6 weeks to find out if you are pre-approved.
Okay, so we may know for budget season
Correct.
where we're at.
And that
Okay.
is,
That'd be a big one.
it has potential.
Okay.
Let's see, beyond that, with Mr. Evans, I haven't chased down some of the smaller projects in town because he is, obviously picking up, and we need to focus on getting Pine River done. But once he's in town and we have him here, I've got a few things scheduled, like around Hunter's Bridge, that patchwork that we did there on the road. There's some runoff water concerns in that intersection as a whole that he's aware of.
Is he gonna rip wrap that? Coming down 153?
I think I'll probably let him decide. We hadn't really got on site and discussed it, so that's a little open-ended right now. There's a section as you traverse over the newly paved area from 153, and you're leaving the intersection. There's a little pocket there on the left on Hunter's Bridge that is really deep, washes out all the time, and I'm hoping some riprap in there might be a solution. But I really need to, meet with Ron and get his professional input on what he thinks would work best. But we're hoping to look at that intersection and just make it a little bit better than it was, and direct water a little better than it has been. Beyond that, we are looking at another sign, at least on this side, that 153 side, for no trucking, no through trucks. There was brought to our attention earlier in the year by some folks up on Bonham, that old install, not that old, probably 2015-ish, of catch basin. It's part of the Acton Watershed Alliance, improvements on the lake to keep sediment from going in the lake. Well, that catch basin area has loaded up with sediment, which was designed to do, but now it's not really functioning to its fullest potential. The basic concept was you put riprap in, it catches everything, and eventually you have to take the riprap out and replace it. Not the greatest plan, but that's what was done. So that should take place. And I'll be talking to Ron about that. We have a small repair on Green Mountain Road on sections of the newly paved that had a little damage there that a resident brought to our attention. I did review that prior when R&D was in town, and I was hoping that we could get that squared away, along with paving over the culverts that will go in on Pine River. The thing of that now is, with the rain and a booming economy, the paving folks have been flat out all year. They've been booked, and it's probably going to be hard to get anybody to come into town. And timeline for putting things out to bid is, the money shouldn't be that high that you would be required to, but you don't have that kind of time. The season basically ends end of October. So I would suggest, if we know that Ron is going to get there and open these culverts up, open the road up, that you probably reach out to R&D. Some of the other companies aren't really focused on some of these smaller jobs at all. And R&D has a separate division that does driveways and smaller projects, and we've used them in the past. So they're most likely, given the good working relationship the town has with them, to try and accommodate a small job like that for us. No guarantee that they can get to it either, but I would think they'd probably give you your best bet to get a quality company on short notice.
Okay.
Let's see.
When you were here last week, or before, you said you were gonna follow up with Allstate Materials to find out if they would give you a different answer on the date for Snow Road
Right.
paving.
So they're still committed to the tail end of September. And I pretty much was fairly insistent that we'd like to have at least a 2-week window of time before they come to town to pave, which I was hoping that they were going to give us an answer this week, or at the worst case next week, as to when that timeline would be. They're again affected by the rain. Paving companies are especially affected this year by the weather. So they're the ones that are struggling the most. With that, Bruce Ryder said he would do his best to give us a hard and fast date. And there again, I'd asked Bruce to come in and look at like the Hunter's Bridge Road 153 connection and stuff. Never got back to me in the past. So these little jobs, it just shows that even a company we're contracted with wasn't really even able to get back to me. Never mind, just come out and look at it and say no and talk about it. They just never got to it.
Okay.
Other than that, I think that's the bulk of the small stuff around town. certainly with the rains, I don't think they were torrential, but I don't doubt that Mr. Downs, who works for Ron Evans, is probably gonna be out today, tomorrow, if he hasn't been out already, reviewing our gravel roads for washouts, and likely add to that list of things to take care of.
Yeah, a couple of them I drove on, seem to have held up, so
That's good.
cross our fingers.
I know I was in discussions with another company that sells magnesium chloride and calcium chloride. They had a nice price point, they had a good presentation, and in fact, I believe they're actually cheaper and than Allstate's material. So we should have some competition on that. I think with next year, it might be healthy to put that out to them both. And with that, they offer the magnesium chloride, which Allstate's doesn't. All chlorides are not going to be great environmentally, but I've heard some tell that it's magnesium chloride's a little bit easier on the environment. So it might be worth trying a test run with that.
Does the state DOT have any papers that might talk about the difference between the two of them?
I didn't review that. I didn't look into that, but those are the two standard chemicals that are used throughout the state outside of brine, which, you know, if you have a facility where you can set up tanks and have the brine, you can do that. And I know the state does that on some 93 and such. We're not in any position really to be using brine here, but both of those chemicals are the staples for small communities. And I'm sure that there's probably literature on, you know, the MSDS and whatever it is that it wouldn't take much to look into.
Okay, good.
I think that's pretty much the bulk of it. I may have missed something, like I said, I ain't totally prepared on that. Than that, I've had some interaction as a health officer with the town's attorney on following up on some items that, you know, I probably could discuss in non-public with the board, should you need to do that, or with individual members. The primary thing taking place right now is in the courts. So that's a point where we really shouldn't go public to discuss that. Otherwise, consideration in past conversations here have been for a health ordinance, and the phone that you heard ring was Mr. Cagney, who's the compliance officer at DES, calling me back for pursuing some of the septic design logs and you know, is there a database for that, approvals, all that stuff. So it's a consulting call on that very issue, as well as there's our health ordinance could encompass quite a bit of materials, and I have some background material from that from other towns. So it's just a question of finding the time to get together with interested parties and start reviewing that. The other thing that's come up has been nuisance ordinances. Now, there are separate nuisance ordinances out there, but these things can get very broad, both of these ordinances. So we might want to look at nuisances that might tie into health-related things, that you might have an overlap there, in which case you might just go with one ordinance for the time being. Effingham's a town that likes its chainsaws and its firearms and, you know, hunting and everything else. So there's a limited amount of restriction that you probably want to chase. You know, there's a lot of rural, that 50% of the town basically is in some kind of protected status. So it is very rural. And I think whenever we design or come up with, we should have an idea to look at that kind of character of the town, consider that. But when you get into the real need of things like non-functioning or non-existing septic systems, I think we've hit that point where it has a real potential impact, negative impact on the town, because there's definitely more of that going on than you'd like to think about.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
That piece on Green Mountain Road, is that rip up right there, just the other side of Elm Street?
Yeah.
Looks
yeah.
like the wing caught it.
Yeah, actually, in review with R&D when they were in for other work they just did for us, and we had a conversation with Jerry from R&D, and they have a small, basically 2-foot wide machine. And it might even be just a walk behind, and it does like the milling effect, you know, you get those rutted grooves. And he looked at that and he said, that's all you need there is to just go over and grind out that little bit of the top layer, and it could patch that. So that was a consideration of having them do that if we had them in for the culvert on Pine River. So that would, you know, be one more thing. There may be other things around town that I haven't picked up on lately that, you know, could be packaged in, but that's pretty much all I had for paving at this time.
It'd be a shouldering issue right there at Rye Field and Green Mountain. Looks like they caught it,
Okay,
the wing there last year too.
Rye Field in Green Mountain?
Yeah.
Green Mountain or?
Right at the intersect, right by the yield sign,
Okay,
you'll see it. I mean, it drops down that far from the edge of the pavement. And they did catch it last year with the wing.
would you say that that's?
It's probably more of a shouldering
Oh, okay.
issue, not pavement. But
That is.
if they catch it again, it could turn into pavement.
Well, I think we have an ongoing situation that never got finalized last year with some shouldering. Townhouse Road, the top of that hill that you go over that should use, there should be some shouldering material there. We did some, but I think a follow-up around town on areas that we find or that are very obvious that having edge cracking, especially on a better conditioned road, would be good to get Ron out there and see if we can't shoulder them.
Do you still have the information you did some research on last year on that shouldering machine?
Shouldering machine.
Yeah, the one that you had done some homework and at one point brought up a thought that we might want to purchase it from a town standpoint. So no matter which road person we were contracted with, we would have a capability to do those shoulders.
You know, Chuck, I'm embarrassed to say my mind is
Okay.
not picking up on this one at the
All right.
moment. Let me see if I can think about that. It comes back to me.
Okay,
I have so much junk crap, paperwork, research stuff everywhere. It's now forming piles because I have less time to dedicate to the town. So I'm getting a little buried.
good. All right, thank you.
Sure, I'll try to find that.
Anything else, sir?
No,
Okay, public comment. Does anybody have question or issue? Mr. Eagle?
Yes, the stop sign that used to exist at the end of Wilkinson Swamp Road and Jones Road is missing.
Including the post. Somebody ripped the whole thing out.
Is that, yeah? Okay, so you guys are aware of it.
No, now that you bring it up, I drove by it about a week and a half ago and forgot to write it down, so, yes, I'm aware of that one. And I want to order stop signs, I don't think we got any.
I think we had a few, and I think Tom might have ordered a couple of them.
Okay,
But we did have a more complete list, and Tom may have that.
Yep.
I do have a map of the town marked up with a lot of that information. But I had said to Tom a while ago that probably should put out another order for some signs.
Yep.
There's a lot of things we don't have out there. Speed limit signs and stop signs are a big item. Certainly no through trucks because not all of our roads were posted for that. Signs are missing. And you have that ordinance that was passed last year has a running list. And I think we had a count on those.
yeah, I remember him doing the survey when he drove around.
And maybe freshening up the signs or even repositioning them to catch the eye. Something has changed on Champion Hill might be worth it because nobody seems to pay attention to that. Well, not nobody, but oftentimes you see vehicles going down there that shouldn't be. I have one person who's, been living in this town for a really long time, and I see that truck go down, and it's like, yeah, that you must know the signs there, but maybe that's just become a forgotten thought. Nobody really took it that serious before. Maybe we just need to kind of bring attention to those signs.
Yeah, and I know some of them are covered with trees, and leaves and other things, but we're starting to work on that, so.
Yeah, and then somebody with some hand lockers could, you know, clearly just go over and expose the signage. And that's-
Okay. Good. And Mr. Regal, I
No, just gonna
was
say-
hoping you were gonna show up today.
Is that,
I was hoping you were gonna show up today. I wanted to thank you for your call to the state regarding that turn off 16 on the Elm Street.
Yeah.
And once they did put the lines down, there has not been a pothole there since. There's a very minor one there right now, but it's barely there. So makes it a lot easier to drive that. Thank you.
See, everything doesn't have to come to the selectmen. You can call the governor.
Yeah, Steve did a good job with that one. He just picked up the phone and went at it. Got a good response for it. So helped everybody out. So, anything else?
Yeah, I have a little thing, that we were talking about in planning board, and apparently this is an issue, for the selectmen. That is, commercial permit applications. I guess the selectmen are in charge of, building permit applications and permits issued. Apparently, for commercial building permits, the inspector for those we have. That would be Randy, the fire chief. He's allowed to go into any of these commercial permitted sites and do a fire inspection and or electrical inspection. And so my thought there was maybe this should go on to a checklist from Rebecca or something to that effect, so that each and every one of these permitted sites is inspected by Randy and make sure they're brought to code.
Let me make a quick note here, David.
It was on my list of things to ask Randy.
Yeah,
Yes, I talked
but
to Randy and he said he not only could do them, but he would like to do them.
yeah, we need to come up with some kind of reporting and tracking capability that would.
Well,
would do that.
it was obvious to me that, I don't think you're gonna be able to get a heads up out of planning board because mostly we don't deal with building. So, it might be the simplest way is just to have on a checklist for Rebecca.
I'll check with our assessing person, Dave. He's building some tracking into the Avatar database right now. That's going to allow us to track building permits, septic tank approvals and some other stuff. And I'll ask him with what he's designing, whether we've got a way to flag that additional level of commercial. So that we could actually just run a report on it and give it to Randy. Or Randy could say, hey, I want to go out and do it. Give me the report for the last month or two or whatever.
Well, from my research in the RSA's, Randy is the man. He is, for lack of a better words, entitled to do this because the state uses him as the fire marshal in our town and other towns like ours. And so this is a good way to get our inspections done without hiring a building inspector, without going through all that. At least on the commercial, so I don't know what percentage of that is, but it's something.
It is. And he actually brought a form in a couple weeks ago that he wants to start using. So we developed that new ordinance and passed it here last year. And Randy's actually got a form that could be attached to a building permit that needs to be completed, and there may be a way to track that response form to be able to determine that. So we'll do a little follow-up. I'll do some homework and we'll come back in 2 weeks and give you some info. Anything else, David?
No, also,
Okay.
Like I said, I've got another thing here following Dave's thought processes here. I'm not sure that the zoning officer is able to keep up with the activity levels in the town anymore. I know that she doesn't want tons of hours, but I think it seems like there's a lot of activity, a lot of building going on that may or may not have permits. I didn't chase down everything. And I think some of the commercial entities, there's activity where there's definitely not any compliance with follow up the site plan or building permits. And it might be the time to look at maybe additional staffing or some out of the box thinking. Because I know in the past, Rebecca didn't want a ton of hours, and I think she hasn't been available at points this year. So before we lose a handle on so much of this activity around town, and then go back and tell people, hey, you've got to take apart or do something, a lot of work, which obviously frustrates a lot of folks and is expense. Something to consider on how we, move forward is this growth in the community and keeping a handle on it so it's good growth.
I agree, but my thought on that was if it just became a line item, a question on the permit checklist, it would somehow require that Randy be informed of each of these that comes up, and that's really where we're at. That I think is the nuts and bolts of it, that Randy was actually informed that there is.
All right.
And I think the form that he presented us in the last week or two would be enough information for him to do a follow-up and act on it.
And I
But we
agree
just need to
with
make
that.
sure the process, we need to come up with the process to make sure when the permit is going out, that it's also as part of whatever somebody's requesting, that is part of the piece that comes in, and you don't get a permit until you've actually completed the document if you're commercial.
Just to be clear, what I'm talking about is unpermitted growth or expansion.
Yep.
So therefore, it's not likely to be on anybody's
No.
radar.
Yeah, and I've actually been driving around town, doing some homework and research on properties that particularly have RVs, where people are just living in them annually. And I'm finding that a significant number of them do not have any permits and have never had any permits.
There is that, and I'm aware of that as well. And there's, I know one property that's got a commercial expansion that's not approved. I think there's a lot of activity, like I said, that is falling by the wayside. And the only way I think it can be captured is if we've got more boots on the ground, so to speak, to handle it and to do the paperwork and the follow-up and the contacts. So that's my bigger concern, my additional concern.
No, and related to kind of the RV discussion, it's like it also falls into a health officer court
I have a
relative
list.
to, disposal of liquids of all kinds.
Yeah, and this is all part of that greater discussion that we've had ongoing about septic systems and such. These RVs that just have been there for 12 years and don't go away, but get a permit every year. People living in them year round. What's the activity? So there's a lot there. Are they properly hooked up to septic systems? Is there an improved septic system or a drum on the ground? There's a lot going on, and I think that it needs to get a new level of scrutiny, and we're not there.
I agree there, but I wanted to be, this is really a specific thing to commercial properties. And we have everything we need to solve the issue. It just needs to be reorganized, maybe.
No, it's with the ordinance we have, with the docket, with the application form that Randy presented to us the other day. I had no issues with it. It's a standard form. But we need to now make sure we can validate a process that starts with the building permit area and then be able to track it. My experience here is if it ends up being a manual file folder thing, it's never going to work. So David has been kind enough to explore some of the tracking, particularly of permits, using the avatar system. so we can get automatic red flagging with reports that said it's time to follow up on this property because it's either exceeded its permit or exceeded extension permit. Same thing with septics. I've got Mike going to the state to see if we can get a data dump of every approved septic system in the town, when it was put in, and the property address. And if we can do that, we already know we can load that into Avatar and track that. It would then allow us to be able to identify properties that have no recorded septic system at all and follow up with those. So, and that will take more on the ground boots effort, as Mike's talking about. But I think it's been kind of highlighted this year because of that human waste barrel dump that we had in town. It's kind of gotten to the point where we can no longer not address some of the septic tank issues that are out there or not out there. And we need to deal with them. And it will take more manpower and people power to do that.
Well, if I may, another follow-up on this is Rebecca has put out some mailers in the past. The last maybe 3 years or so, it's been a kind of a constant once a year, this little flyer that she sends out. And a lot of people probably don't really care for it, but then again, I've had a lot of people tell me it was informative and it brought them in to file the appropriate paperwork. One of the things, I guess, for where I was going with all these issues is perhaps septic systems could find their way on to that listing. But doomage, since we are tracking with the assessing now, tying that in, there's a doomage component that people probably are not aware of. So that is to say, if you went out and you installed something on your property and it had a value of $25,000, built the structure, you go by a couple of years and it doesn't get captured, you never file a building permit, and you're not paying taxes on it. The doomage basically would be the taxes you owe times 3. So maybe a little enlightenment as to the state's rules regarding assessing, that you can build it today and you could have paid $300 in taxes on it for the last 3 years. Now you could be looking at paying $900. Just, I don't know, how you do it and if she would do it, but it is part of the process in the RSAs for assessing. Since everything's tying together now, or that's the direction, a little public outreach to let people know that the risk they run.
I was thinking the same type of thing, and when I was thinking it was more toward current use issues, little public information will go a long way.
Current use issues, and you're getting the advantage of current use from your taxes, but you posted your property to no hunting, and the state
Well,
law
that
says
would
you
be
can't do
one
that.
example, sure.
Yeah, all right. Okay, good. Anything else?
Gave you enough today.
Yeah.
It's work.
You did. Yeah, the list is growing.
Sorry, Jim.
No, it's actually, there's a lot of the pieces that are there, but they're scattered. And it needs now to have a set down and kind of put the strategy in line, and then just make sure we've got everybody in sync with that, and we'll have a process. So it's not like we gotta start from scratch. We've got a lot of the work done. We just need to pull some additional information together from a strategy standpoint. Process.
Thank you for your intention to bring that up as well.
All right, do you need a non-public tonight?
I don't.
Okay,
Deanna had a non-public.
she did. Okay. Then we will adjourn for 5 minutes and come back at the 10 o'clock hour, and we will be going into a non-public. Okay, we're back live. I'll make a motion to come out of non-public.
Second.
All those in favor, all right?
All right.
Seal the minutes. I'll make a motion to seal the minutes. Non-public minutes.
Second.
All right.
And how long do you want them sealed?
I'm going to 6 months.
6 months.
All right, anything else? Before the panel?
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn.
You made it, or you want me to make it?
Go ahead.
I'll take a motion. I'll second your motion. That was-
All right, all in favor, all right.
Aye.
Thank you, folks. Have a great week.